Retirement surprised me, not because it came quickly, but because I didn't know how it would feel. For decades, I had imagined that when I finally stopped working, freedom would come rushing in. But the truth is, when that day came, I didn't feel free. I felt a little lost, like I had been set adrift without a clear direction. No schedule, no deadlines, just time and silence. It took me a while to realize something important. Real freedom in retirement doesn't just happen. You have to build it. You have to shape it. And for me, that started with changing the way I lived each day. I didn't learn this from a book or from someone else's story. These are lessons I found on slow mornings, quiet walks, and long afternoons with my own thoughts. Today, I want to share with you 9 simple habits that turned my retirement from uncertain to deeply fulfilling. These habits made me feel more alive, more peaceful, and yes, more free. If you're retired or thinking about it, I hope what I've learned will help guide you, like a friend walking beside you. Let's get started. Habit 1. Wake up with purpose. I remember one particular morning about 6 months into my retirement. I had slept in late, really late. It must have been close to 11. The house was quiet. I got up, made a cup of coffee, sat by the window, and just stared outside. There were birds on the feeder, squirrels running along the fence, the usual things. But something felt off. I wasn't tired. I wasn't busy. I wasn't even particularly sad. I was just floating. That day, something clicked. I had waited my whole life for the freedom of retirement, and now that I had it, I didn't know what to do with it. I had all this time and no sense of direction. That's when I realized that what I needed wasn't more rest or more entertainment. I needed purpose, not a job, not a big life mission, just something small to get me out of bed with a sense of meaning. Since then, I've made it a habit. Every single morning, I choose one purpose for the day, just one. Sometimes it's small, like trimming the hedges, calling my grandson, or organizing that junk drawer I've avoided for years. Other days, it's something more reflective, like writing a few lines in my journal or reading a chapter in a book I've been putting off. It's not about productivity or checking things off a list. It's about waking up for something. We spend our working years waking up for someone else, the boss, the kids, the job, but now we get to wake up for ourselves. That's a gift, if we choose to use it well. Purpose gives shape to time. It turns an ordinary Tuesday into something worthwhile, and that feeling of having something to look forward to each morning is deeply freeing. You're no longer drifting, you're steering. Even if it's just a short distance, even if the task is small, it matters. So my suggestion is this: don't let your mornings blur together. Before you go to sleep tonight, ask yourself, what's one thing I want to do tomorrow that would make me feel good, useful, or connected? Write it down. And when the morning comes, let that be the reason you get up. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be yours. Habit 2. Talk to yourself kindly. For a long time, I didn't realize how unkind I was to myself. I'm not talking about yelling or anything dramatic. I'm talking about the little things. The offhand comments I'd mutter under my breath. The names I'd call myself when I forgot something or made a small mistake. Things like, "You idiot," or "You're getting useless," or even, "Come on, you're not as sharp as you used to be." I would never say those words to a friend. I would never say them to my son or daughter or even a stranger. But somehow I was saying them to myself over and over and not thinking twice about it. Then one day, I forgot where I put my car keys. Again. I walked into the kitchen, stopped, and said out loud, "You old fool." And something about the way it came out, so automatic, so harsh, made me pause. I stood there for a minute, holding my coffee, and thought, why do I speak to myself like this? What if my best friend were standing here? What if it were my wife? That was the turning point. Since that day, I've made a conscious habit of speaking to myself with kindness. It wasn't easy at first. Years of negative self-talk don't just disappear overnight. But now, when I forget something, I try to laugh. I say, well, it happens. When I look in the mirror and see new wrinkles or grayer hair, I say, you've earned every one of those lines. Self-kindness doesn't mean ignoring reality. It just means telling the truth with gentleness. It means treating yourself with the same patience and compassion you would offer to someone you love. And here's the surprising part. When you speak kindly to yourself, everything else starts to feel lighter. You carry less stress. You recover from bad days faster. You forgive more easily. And you start to believe that you're not broken. You're just human. I know we were raised in a generation where you were supposed to be tough on yourself. No whining, no softness, just push through. But that kind of thinking can turn into a lifelong habit of self-criticism. And in retirement, it can become toxic. Because now you have more quiet moments, more time to think, and if your inner voice is unkind, it fills that silence with pain. So start listening to yourself. Really listen. When you catch that negative voice, pause. Replace it with something softer. You don't have to become your own cheerleader. Just be your own friend. You've lived too much life to be tearing yourself down. You deserve your own kindness. And that, my friend, is freedom. Habit 3. Keep real friendships alive. When you retire, something shifts in your social life. You no longer bump into people at work every day. You don't sit through meetings or grab lunch with coworkers, and slowly, almost without noticing, the casual connections fade. The phone rings less. The calendar feels emptier. You think, maybe I'll call someone next week, and then next week becomes next month. I'll be honest with you, loneliness is one of the hardest parts of getting older. Not many people talk about it, but it's there. You can be surrounded by people, even family, and still feel a quiet sort of emptiness if you don't have real connection. That's why one of the most freeing habits I've built is this. I stay intentional about friendship. I don't wait for someone to reach out. I reach out. Every Thursday, I meet 2 of my oldest friends at a little diner down the road. We've been doing it for years now. The conversations aren't always deep. Sometimes we talk politics. Sometimes we complain about our knees. Sometimes we just sit there, sipping coffee and watching the world go by. But the consistency, the shared time, the laughter, the familiar faces, grounds me. It makes me feel known. And at this stage in life, that feeling is gold. Real friendships take effort. They don't just happen. And in retirement, you have the time to nurture them, if you choose to. Maybe it's a weekly walk with a neighbor. Maybe it's writing an old friend a letter. Maybe it's inviting someone over for coffee without worrying whether the house is spotless. Don't let pride or busyness or awkwardness stop you. If someone crosses your mind, call them. If you miss someone, tell them. Life's too short for silence. Friendship is freedom. It frees you from isolation, from overthinking, from that creeping sense that you're going through life alone. You're not, but you have to make the first move sometimes. You don't need a dozen friends. You just need 1 or 2 who see you, hear you, and meet you where you are. And if you're lucky enough to have that, hold on to it with both hands. Habit 4. Learn something new. Just because. You know, it's funny. When we were younger, learning always had a purpose. You studied for a test. You trained for a job. You memorized things because someone told you to. And eventually, for a lot of us, learning became something we stopped doing. Not because we didn't want to, but because life got busy and we figured we were done. But retirement gives us something rare. Time to learn again, not because we have to, but because we can. And that, right there, is a kind of freedom most people don't even notice. Last year, I decided to learn the harmonica. I bought a cheap one online, watched a few videos, and let me tell you, it sounded awful at first. I mean awful. My dog left the room, but I kept at it. 10 minutes here, 15 there, no pressure, no goal. And slowly, something started to shift. Not just the sound, but me. I felt lighter, more curious, more alive. It wasn't about mastering it. It was about exploring something new just for the joy of it. And that joy reminded me that I'm not done growing. I'm not stuck in who I was at 60 or 70. I'm still becoming someone. That's what learning does. It wakes you up. It stretches your mind and brings new colors into your daily routine. Whether it's trying a new recipe, figuring out how to use your smartphone, or taking a free online class about history or gardening, it keeps your spirit young. We don't have to chase degrees or certificates. We just have to stay open, try something, even if we fail, especially if we fail, because the real gift is not the thing you're learning. It's the part of you that lights up while you're doing it. That part is still in there, still alive, still waiting. So my advice? Pick one thing you've always wanted to try, something small, something new, and start. Not to prove anything, just to feel the spark again. That spark? That's freedom. Habit 5. Create more than you consume. After I retired, I fell into a pattern I think a lot of people can relate to. I'd wake up, make coffee, turn on the TV, check the news, scroll through the internet, maybe flip to another channel. Before I knew it, half the day was gone. I wasn't tired, but I felt drained, like I had taken in so much, and yet I had nothing to show for it. One evening, I turned everything off. No television, no phone, just me, the quiet, and an old notebook I hadn't touched in years. I opened it up and started writing. Nothing fancy, just some thoughts, some memories, a few ideas. It didn't matter what it was. What mattered was that I was finally putting something out, not just taking things in. That night I slept better than I had in weeks. That moment taught me something I never forgot. We are made to create, not just to sit and absorb. And creating doesn't mean you have to be an artist or a musician. It means building something, anything that comes from you. You could write a story, plant flowers, bake bread, fix a broken chair, make a scrapbook of old family photos, whistle a tune. Even telling stories to your grandkids, that's a form of creating. When we create, we feel useful. We connect to the world in a way that watching TV or scrolling online can never replace. It taps into something older and deeper inside us. Something that says, I'm still here. I still have something to offer. You don't have to share your work with anyone. In fact, sometimes the most beautiful things are the ones made in quiet, for no one but yourself. But here's the thing. The more you create, the more alive you feel. And that sense of aliveness, that's what makes retirement feel free. It gives your days color, texture, meaning. So next time you catch yourself consuming, pause. Ask yourself, what could I make today instead? You might be surprised by how good it feels. Creating is not about perfection. It's about participation, and that's something we all still have the power to do. Habit 6. Give quietly and often. I used to think that once I retired, my days of giving were mostly behind me. I wasn't leading a team anymore. I wasn't volunteering like I used to. The kids were grown, out living their lives. And I found myself wondering, what do I offer now? But the truth is, giving doesn't stop just because the roles change. In fact, giving, quiet, small, unexpected giving, might be the most meaningful kind of all. One December, I walked by my neighbor's house and noticed his porch light was out. He's a widower like me, doesn't get around much. So I went to the hardware store, bought the right bulb, and replaced it when he wasn't home. Didn't leave a note, didn't say a word. A week later, I heard him on the phone telling someone, "You know, sometimes I think angels really do stop by." That moment stayed with me. Giving doesn't need to be big. Sometimes it's a kind word, a listening ear, a small meal for someone going through a hard time, a handwritten letter, a blanket dropped off at a shelter, a tip larger than expected, a compliment to a tired cashier. And when you give without fanfare, without needing thanks or attention, something shifts inside you. You remember that your life still touches other lives, that you're not just passing time, you're passing light. It also gets you out of your own head. When we focus only on our aches, our routines, our worries, it's easy to shrink into ourselves. But when we shift the focus outward, something opens, a sense of purpose, a deep joy. Giving connects us. It reminds us that we're part of a larger story, that we're still capable of shaping the world, even in quiet ways. You don't have to wait for the holidays to be generous. You don't need a nonprofit or a title. You just need a moment and the willingness to act. So if you ever feel like you don't matter anymore, like the world's moved on without you, find someone to help, in some small way, and see how quickly that lie disappears, because giving is freedom. The kind that lifts both the one who receives and the one who gives. Habit 7. Spend time outside. When I was younger, I didn't think much about the outdoors. I was too busy getting from one place to another. Work, errands, picking up the kids, checking off to-do lists. Even when I was outside, my mind was still inside, caught up in deadlines and details. But retirement gave me something I didn't know I needed: space to slow down. And that's when I started noticing the world again. Not just passing through it, but really seeing it. Now, most evenings, you'll find me on the porch with a cup of tea. I watch the sky change colors. I listen to the birds trade gossip in the trees. I feel the wind move across my face. Sometimes I just sit and breathe. No phone, no music, just nature doing what it's always done, long before I got here and long after I'm gone. There's something humbling about being outside. It reminds you that you're part of something bigger, that even when your life feels heavy, the world keeps spinning. The seasons keep changing. The flowers bloom, the leaves fall, and the sun keeps rising. And there's peace in that rhythm. Being outside also does something subtle to the spirit. You might not notice it right away, but over time, it softens your thoughts, clears the mental fog, lifts the weight on your chest. You don't need a hiking trail or a national park. A front porch, a city bench, even a backyard garden will do. I sometimes talk to the trees, not out loud, just in my head. I thank them for their shade. I admire how they stand through storms and still stay rooted. There's wisdom in trees. And when you spend time with nature, real time, quiet time, you start to remember who you are without the noise. Not someone defined by a job or a title or a to-do list. Just a human being. Breathing, watching, appreciating. If you've been feeling disconnected lately, go outside, even for 10 minutes. Leave the phone. Feel the sun. Look at the sky. Let the breeze carry your worries for a little while. Because sometimes, freedom doesn't look like movement or achievement. Sometimes it looks like stillness under a big blue sky. Habit 8. Keep it simple, especially with money. There's a kind of freedom that comes from having enough. Not more than enough, just enough. And let me tell you, it took me a long time to understand the difference. When I first retired, I spent months worrying about my finances. I tracked every penny, read every investment article, double-checked every account. I told myself it was responsible, but deep down I was afraid. Afraid of running out. Afraid of not being prepared. Then one day I had lunch with an old friend. We sat in a park, eating sandwiches from home. No fancy restaurant, no big plans, just two old guys on a bench talking about life. He said something that stayed with me. He said, "You know what wealth is at our age? It's peace of mind." And I realized I had been chasing the wrong kind of security. So I started simplifying. I canceled subscriptions I didn't use. I stopped buying things I didn't need. I organized my bills, made a simple monthly budget, and stuck to it. I downsized, not just my spending, but my expectations. And slowly, the stress melted away. Now I know what I have. I know what I owe. I know what brings me joy. And it's not stuff. It's time. It's people. It's quiet mornings and afternoon walks. It's feeling content instead of restless. Money is important. Of course it is. But after a certain point, it's not about how much you have. It's about how clearly you see what really matters. You don't need a financial planner to tell you this. You just need to ask yourself a simple question. What are you spending on that's stealing your peace instead of giving you joy? Freedom doesn't come from riches. It comes from clarity, from knowing what's enough and letting the rest go. So if money has been weighing on your heart, simplify. Not because you're giving up, but because you're choosing peace over pressure. That's a kind of wealth no one can take from you. Habit 9. Practice daily gratitude. Of all the habits I've picked up in retirement, this one might be the simplest and the most powerful. Every morning, before I check the news or read a single email, I grab a small notebook and write down 3 things I'm grateful for. Just 3. Nothing fancy. Sometimes it's as simple as my morning coffee or the way the light comes through the window. Other times it's deeper, like the fact that my heart is still beating or a phone call from my daughter. And here's what I've found. The more I do it, the more I see. Gratitude grows like a garden. The more you water it, the more it surprises you. This habit has changed how I experience my days. It hasn't erased the hard things. My knees still ache. I still miss people who are gone. I still worry sometimes. But gratitude puts everything in perspective. It doesn't deny the pain. It just reminds you that the pain isn't the whole story. When you start noticing the small blessings, you realize you're surrounded by them. A neighbor's smile, a warm blanket, a good memory, a quiet evening. Gratitude grounds you in the now. And the present moment, no matter how ordinary it seems, is where life actually happens. Not in regrets about the past, not in worries about the future. Right here, right now. And when you learn to say thank you, not just with words, but with your attention, your presence, you become a little freer each day. It doesn't take long. 5 minutes, 3 sentences, a simple pause. But that small ritual has helped me meet each day with more calm, more awareness, and more joy. So if you take nothing else from this list, take this. Gratitude is not a feeling. It's a practice. And the more you practice it, the more your heart opens to the freedom that's already waiting for you. Now that I've shared these 9 habits with you, I want to leave you with this thought. Freedom in retirement isn't about doing everything. It's about choosing what matters most and letting that guide your days. You don't need to master all these habits at once. Just start with one. One small change, one new rhythm. And over time, you'll notice the difference, not just in how your days look, but in how your heart feels. I'm not here to tell you how to live. I'm just a man who's made some mistakes, learned a few lessons, and found a quieter kind of happiness in places I didn't expect. My hope is that something in this message stays with you. And if it did, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, Tell me what freedom looks like in your life, and if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe. Here, we don't just grow older, we grow wiser. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take good care of yourself. You've earned it.